Hey guys, Emily from Planned and Planted back with another video for y'all. Today I'm going to be updating some of my yearly trackers in my reading journal with April stats, as well as making my April stats and review page. Then I'm going to be talking about the books I read in April and their accompanying journal spreads. Let's get right to it. So this journal cover as well as the notebook I'm using are both from Archer and Olive. You can find the links and discount codes in the description. I print these book covers off on my home printer, and then I keep any extras with books from my immediate TBR in this pocket over here. These super tiny ones are going into this first spread I'm updating today, which is my 2023 books read spread. I started printing some of these out on sticker paper so that I can just peel off the backs and paste them directly into my journal, which has been a big game changer for me. But sometimes if I don't have enough to take up a full page, I'll just use a regular printer paper and tape it in like this so that I'm not wasting all my sticker paper, because it is a little bit pricier than regular paper. This has very quickly become one of my favorite spreads in this journal because it's just a really easy way to visually track the books that I've read and see where I am on my reading goal. So I'm just super happy with how this is turning out. And this page was almost directly inspired by Papaya Reads journal on Instagram. So be sure to check her out if you like book journals, because she has some super cute spreads as well. Now I am just filling in the star rating for each of these. These little 5-star stickers are from Alicia Marksit on Etsy. I'll put the link to that in the description below as well. I'm kind of trying to coordinate these colors on these by the star reviews. So like all the 5 stars are blue, 4 stars green, but I don't stick to it too closely, but that's okay. Now that I'm done with this page, I am moving on to my reading challenge tracker. The only one that I completed from this for April was to read a book talk fave, which was A Court of Thorns and Roses, so I'm filling that in. And as you can see, I still have some blank squares down here for prompts I haven't written in, so if you have any ideas for what I should put there, leave a comment with your suggestion, because I'm running out of ideas. Now we are on to our reading goal tracker. I have these color coordinated by months, so yellow is the color for April. So I'm filling in the 5 squares for the 5 books that I read in April, and I am now at 24 books read in 2023 so far. This next spread seems to be a Bookstagram fave. It's my books by genre tracker. I talk a little bit more about this spread in my 2023 reading journal flip through video, so make sure to check that one out too. But basically I'm filling in the spines with a color based on the genre. You can see the color key off to the left there. And then I write in the title of the book. Court of Thorns and Roses right here is fantasy and romance. Then Happy Place, which is romance. 2 memoirs, which is What My Bones Know and No Happy Endings. And then the last one is Tender is the Flesh. And that one I listed as horror and other for dystopian, although it really could have been literary fiction. So I take some leeway with these genres because there's never usually like a clear-cut answer a lot of the time. The next spread is my format and pub year tracker, and this spread is kind of one of the reasons I like to have my reading journal spreads for the month done before I start this, because I look up the year that it was published and I have the format as well listed on these pages, so it makes it a lot easier to reference and not like stop and look up the year like as I'm doing it. So for April, I listened to 2 audiobooks. One was published in 2023 and the other in 2019. I read 2 ebooks, both from 2020, and then 1 print book, which was published in 2022. I think it's so cool and interesting that I can just look at the spread and see that I've read the same number of audiobooks and print books this year, so I really like this spread too. I didn't print out a book cover for my Hall of Fame, and I already filled in my book acquisition, so we're gonna go straight to my yearly stats at a glance spread right here. This spread is another reason why I like to have the individual book review pages done before I fill in these trackers, because there's a lot of information that I reference for these. And then this I use to make my monthly stats page. I have really slacked on my library savings tracker, but I'll go back and fill it all in eventually. And I've also been slacking on my book log page and my DNF log. So we'll see if I keep those for my next journal. We're also skipping this page because I didn't read any books in April that I already owned. But I did read a few books that were on my TBR list, so I'm going into the genre that these were from, and I am marking off the books that I completed from these TBR lists. Now that I have updated my yearly trackers, it's time to make my April stats and review page. My theme for April is very green and houseplanty and springy, as you can see, so I try to keep that theme consistent through the stats review page as well. Now, in the past, when I've made these review pages, I typically draw the graphs in by hand, but it doesn't look very clean, and so I actually got the idea from Elizabeth Turn, Plant-Based Write on YouTube, to put my stats into Canva and then print them off. And I really like the aesthetics of that, and it also is just a little bit easier, so I decided to try that out this month. The general layout that I have for these pages has kind of stayed the same all 4 months. I have the title at the top, and then right below that I list how many books I read and then how many pages and hours that equates to. And then below that I have all of the graphs and stats that I track for the year. Now I'm flipping through my little box of stickers, trying to find some kind of greenery and plant stickers that I can add to this to make it a little more cohesive with the plant theme. These stickers are from Archer and Olive from their Growing Seasons monthly kit. You can use code PLANTEDPLANTED10 to save 10% off your Archer and Olive order. That monthly kit also includes this washi tape that I'm about to use, which is, I'm obsessed with it. The little houseplants on it are so freaking cute. Now comes the fun part, which is trying to fit all of these graphs into the page in a way that makes sense and isn't too crowded. And I actually end up leaving one out because I just can't make it work on one page. But I really like the way that Elizabeth Turn in her videos kind of cuts it to where it's just the graph itself that's in there, and then she writes in the other elements, labeling it in her own handwriting to kind of incorporate things and make it look a little bit more cohesive and less sterile, I suppose. This first graph that I'm cutting out is a pie chart of the moods that I read. This is one of my favorite stats to include, and I put it in every single review spread. These moods come from the app Storygraph, which I use to track my reading. It's kind of like Goodreads, but way better. My moods for this month are mostly emotional, reflective, and funny. And then there's a little bit of dark, tenseness, informative, hopeful, and adventurous. And I just think it's so fun to see how my reading moods change throughout the year because I am very much a mood reader. This next one is a simple little line graph that has my fiction and nonfiction. I read 3 fiction books and 2 nonfiction books. It usually is about even like this for me when it comes to the fiction versus nonfiction divide. The next graph is a little bar graph for the genre that I read. This month I read 2 memoirs, 1 romance, 1 fantasy, and then 1 dystopian. And truly, one of them was Acotar, so it could go either in romance or fantasy, but I don't read a lot of fantasy, so I felt the need to put that one under fantasy for this go-round. Then we have another bar graph for my star rating review. This is basically just to track how many 5-star books I read this month, how many 4-star, etc., etc. And this month I read 2 5-star books, 2 4-star, and 1 2-star. So that's, it's not a bad ratio, not a bad reading month by any means. This little graph right here is my format tracker. I ended up reading 2 audiobooks, 1 print book, and 2 ebooks, which we know this from the pub year and format tracker earlier, but I like to include that on the monthly review stats page as well. And then this other graph is a new one for me. This is author race. I like to keep track of the race of the authors that I'm reading just to kind of hold myself accountable and make sure I'm reading diversely. So this month I read one book by a Latinx author, one book by an Asian American or Pacific Islander, and then 3 books by white authors. Overall, I'm really happy with how this stats page turned out. I really liked the cleanness of printing off the graphs and putting them in, and it was also much easier. So I will probably be carrying that forward in the future. Okay, now that we've updated our reading trackers and I've finished my April stats and review spread, I just want to kind of go back and flip through my April spreads for all the books that I read, because I do make spreads for the individual books. And I have another YouTube video where I film myself making one of those spreads, but they can be kind of chaotic because when I'm going in, I don't know if it's going to be an elaborate spread or if it's going to be a little bit more simple. So I kind of try to do those in advance because it's anybody's guess how crazy they're gonna be. So for each month in my reading journal, I have 3 spreads that I include. I have the cover page, I have a reading tracker and calendar, and then I have a spread for new words that I learned from books. While I'm going through a book, I'll annotate or mark off any words that I come across that I'm not familiar with, just so I can learn them. And in the past, I've actually made this tracking spread 2 pages long. Like in February, it was the full 2 pages, and I actually like it a lot better like this because I want to add in library due dates and new releases like into the actual spread, and there's just not enough space when it's 1 page. So I think in the future, I'm going to always do the full 2 pages. As you can see, the theme for this month was just kind of greenery, plants, you know, spring vibes, and a lot of these, like the sticker or this washi tape is from the Archer and Olive Growing Seasons kit, and a few of those as well. And then these are just from a random sticker pack that I got from Amazon that has a lot of plant themed stuff, and then just this washi is also from Amazon. All of the stuff that I use for the most part, I have on my Amazon storefront. Not everything's from Amazon, so stuff that's not from Amazon is in a separate link in the description. So the first book that I read in April was Acotar, A Court of Thorns and Roses. You've probably seen this book all over. It's so popular right now, and y'all are gonna hate me for this, but I don't get the hype. I wasn't a fan. It was messy. I didn't think it was particularly well written. It's longer than it needed to be. Some of the parts didn't make sense. Like, why was her mother's dying wish for the youngest daughter to take care of the family? Like, that just did not make sense to me. I didn't think the characters were particularly well written, and the world building was not that well done. So I just didn't like it that much. And halfway through the book, I started keeping track of all of the times that Sarah Moss used the format a blank of blank and blank with like a noun of noun and noun. And it was kind of fun to keep track of that because there was a lot of them. This is just from the second half of the book. I did really like this quote. I know a good quote when I see one, as much as I didn't really like this book, and I just realized I didn't have this right here. So I wasn't a huge fan. I'll probably read the second book because I've heard a lot of people say the second one is better, but I've also heard a lot of people say that it's not that much better. But it was also kind of fun to hate read, so I'll probably read it just for fun and just to say that I do it, but overall, not impressed. Okay, second book was Happy Place by Emily Henry. This was a new release. I received an advanced listener's copy from Libro FM, which is an audiobook platform that's really similar to Amazon, but supports small businesses. And if you want to switch your subscription from Audible to Libro, I have a link that you can use below to get 2 free audiobooks. I was looking forward to this book. I have read Beach Read by Emily Henry. That's the only other book by her that I've read, but I did like it. I liked the banter in it, so I was excited for this. And it didn't disappoint. It was a pretty good book. I gave it 3.5 stars because I'm not a big romance reader, and a lot of times I'm just frustrated because so much of romance novels is just miscommunication or not being honest with your feelings about somebody. And like, that's fine for like younger characters, but the characters in this book were like 30 plus years old, and I just felt they were too old to be not honest with each other about their feelings. But there was a lot of good imagery in this book. Like, I printed off a lot of pictures from my mood board that I make on Pinterest. Like, there was a Ferris wheel scene that was really cute. There's this bookstore that they all go to called Murder, She Wrote that's really cute. They're there in town for a Maine lobster festival, so like this literally says Maine lobster festival, and I have this washi tape from Archer and Olive that has little lobsters on it, and I was obsessed. I really have not even used this washi tape before, but I was like, this is it. This is the reason that I have this washi tape. It's to put it in this spread. There was a scene in a cedar shower, an outdoor cedar shower, and if you've read the book, you'll know exactly what I'm talking about, because it was a very good scene. Then there's this picture of this group of friends like on a boat. Since this is a romance book, I also wanted to write down the tropes. So it has fake dating, second chance romance, friends to lovers, and dual timeline. And there are also a few really good quotes that I liked from this book. This one says, "Even when something beautiful breaks, the making of it still matters." And this other one says, "So much of life is waiting for him, and even that torture is bliss." Emily Henry definitely has a lot of good quotes in her books, and she's also really good at writing banter, so that was all really good in the book, and I really loved the dynamic of all of the friends together. And honestly, I want a whole book just about Cleo and Kimmy, because they were two of my favorite characters, and honestly, I think I would have enjoyed more if the book was from their perspective than from Win and Harriet's, but that's just me. I think that's just like the queer girly in me. So overall, it was a good book, and a lot of people gave it like 4 or 5 stars, and it wasn't quite there for me, but some of that's just due to not being a romance reader. The third book I read was What My Bones Know by Stephanie Fu, and it was so good. I heard a lot of people talking about this, and I knew I was gonna like it. It's basically a memoir by Stephanie Fu, who does a lot of podcasts for NPR. It's basically about her journey of getting a diagnosis of complex post-traumatic stress disorder, and her journey of trying to find ways to cope with it and to confront her past. But there's also a lot of talk about generational trauma in this, and it was everything that I want in a memoir. It's emotional, informative, sarcastic, funny, and the writing was impeccable. One of the reasons I really like this is because Fu really seems like an Enneagram 5, which is what I am, and so I think that's another reason why I resonated with it. But there were so many good quotes. I actually have the book here. I had a little annotation system. I don't always make annotation systems, but I did for this book because there was just a lot of things that I was really liking about it. But yeah, as you can see, I tabbed the crap out of this book. There's a lot of good stuff. Another thing that I really liked about it is that even though her and I's journey of like trauma and dealing with her trauma are very different, there's a lot of like quotes and things in this book that resonated with me. These 2 quotes in particular really like stuck in my head. Like, I actually might get part of this tattooed on me, but the first one says, "Ugly things become uglier in the dark. For once, we don't have to cushion the truth, massage it into something palatable. We hold that difficult truth together, and the openness of this ugly reality comforts me in another way." This other one says, "So this is healing then, the opposite of ambiguous dread, fullness. I am full of anger, pain, peace, beauty, of horrible shards and exquisite beauty." And those 2 they're just such beautiful quotes, and I am genuinely considering getting horrible shards and exquisite beauty tattooed on my body somewhere, because it's just like so representative of life in general, but especially just dealing with life after traumatic things happen to you. The last 2 books, first one was No Happy Endings by Nora McInerney, and I listened to this on audio. If you don't know, she is a podcast host. She has a podcast called Terrible Thanks for Asking, but she also has quite a few books. She talks a lot about grief. She experienced the loss of her husband to cancer when she was in her 30s, and her dad died shortly before that, and then she also had a miscarriage right around that time, so she was just dealing with a lot of shit. And she just has a very unique voice and way of talking, and this was her like full memoir, and it was also a really good memoir that I think will stick with me for a while. And this quote that I put in here is, "There is no way through it except through it." Which, if you know, you know. That's the only way through hard things, is through them. You can't go around, you can't go under them. So that was a really good read. Last one was Tender is the Flesh by Agustin Basterrica, and this book is originally in Spanish and was translated to English. This one also was pretty popular for a while, and the only thing that I knew going into it was that it was related to cannibalism, but I had no idea like what the plot was, and it was really messed up, which if you've read it, you can very much attest to this, but it wasn't, the messed up stuff wasn't just there for shock value, like it had a purpose. If you don't know what this book is about, the concept is basically, it's like a post-apocalyptic society where all of the animals in the world have this disease that kills humans basically, so we can't eat animals anymore. So they basically start farming humans, to put it lightly, like the same way that we would have like cattle or pigs or whatever, or chickens, like they're mass produced in that way, like specifically for that purpose. Yeah, it's very disturbing, but it's a very clear commentary on like the meat industry. And there was also a child loss aspect of it that I was not expecting, but I also appreciated because in the book there's a lot of talk about like language and euphemisms and language. Like when you make something prettier than it is with language, it makes it easier to ignore that thing and kind of ensures that that thing continues to happen. So I like that the way they use that in relation to the animal industry, but also relating to death and grief and child loss, because people do use phrases to make it pretty, and it's not a pretty thing, but they use those pretty words to kind of make themselves less uncomfortable, but that discomfort is what kind of pushes for change. So you need that discomfort, you need that direct language. And the writing style of the book was also very direct and not emotional, which took a little bit of getting used to, but it made a lot of sense to me at the end, because you can't be emotionally invested in that kind of world, because if you do, you're just not going to survive. Like you have to detach from it. You have to be direct in what you're speaking about. So I don't know. I thought it was a very well done book. I'm not going to say that I enjoyed it, because I truly hated every second of reading this book, but I appreciate why it was written and the point that the author was trying to make. And the quote that I put from here was, his brain warns him that there are words that cover up the world. There are words that are convenient, hygienic, legal. So I just thought that was a good summation of what appealed to me from this book. And I ended up giving it 4 stars. It's not enjoyable, but it is an important book, I think. So anyway, those are the 5 books that I read in April. Let me know if you guys liked this format of video of me kind of doing this stats page and filling out my yearly tracker, or if you found it interesting to hear me talk about the books that I read in conjunction with the spreads that I did for them, or if you kind of prefer just to see me make the actual book spreads or what, just let me know. Thanks for sticking around and watching this video. I hope you enjoyed.